I left my mafia boss husband, and my goodbye letter destroyed his empire. Chapter 1: The Exit. Sophia did not make a sound when she saw her husband lean close to another woman. That detail got lost later, when the whispers began spreading through Manhattan's upper circles like smoke under a closed door. People imagined shattered champagne flutes and a furious pregnant woman making a scene in the middle of a crowded rooftop restaurant. They imagined Damien Harlow, the coldly beautiful man who quietly owned half the city's most dangerous operations, scrambling to explain the red-headed socialite sitting pressed against his shoulder. But Sophia didn't perform her pain for anyone. 7 months pregnant, wrapped in a midnight emerald gown that curved over her swollen belly, she stood at the elevator entrance and simply watched. Damien's silver-green eyes were completely locked onto the woman across the candlelight. He tilted his head slightly toward her when she spoke. His jaw softened into an expression Sophia had not seen in almost a year. The woman reached up and touched his jaw. He didn't move away. The elevator doors began to close. Sophia stepped back inside them. The hostess, who had been hovering nearby with a polished smile, suddenly looked stricken. "Mrs. Harlow." Sophia held the door open with one hand. Her voice was entirely steady. "Please let Mr. Harlow know his wife stopped by. And that she hopes the evening was everything he needed it to be." Then the doors closed, and Sophia Harlow quietly disappeared from the penthouse world she had spent 4 years trying to make into a home. Her driver was waiting outside on the winter street below. Snow was beginning to fall across the East River. "Back to the residence, Mrs. Harlow?" "Yes." Sophia settled her hand over the curve of her belly. "And keep this off the radio. No calls to Mr. Harlow." The driver said nothing more. He had worked for the Harlow family long enough to know when silence was the only safe response. For 4 years, Sophia had lived inside Damien's carefully constructed world. She had learned the particular language of his silences. His focused silence, when he was calculating something 3 moves ahead. His cold silence, when someone had disappointed him in a way that carried consequences. And his most dangerous silence. The quiet that meant someone was about to cease being a problem entirely. Lately, though, there had been something new. A different kind of silence. The silence of a man who had already made a decision and was simply waiting for the right moment to implement it. She had spent months rewriting that silence into something bearable. He was exhausted. His family's demands were impossible. His mother, Helena, was tightening her grip on the organization again. But Sophia had run out of generous interpretations. At the residence, a glass and limestone tower with a view of Central Park that had always felt more like a display case than a home, Sophia rode the private elevator to the top floor and walked directly to the bedroom. She pulled a single, large bag from the back of the dressing room. Not a suitcase. A bag. Something she could carry quickly. She packed in layers. Warm clothes, practical shoes, her prenatal vitamins, a photograph of her late mother. And underneath everything, wrapped inside a wool scarf, a thick folder of documents she had been quietly, carefully assembling for the past 8 months. Financial records. Ownership structures hidden behind shell companies. Signatures on contracts that would interest federal investigators enormously. Names that connected Damien's legitimate business empire to its darker foundations. Sophia had not gathered these documents to use as weapons. She had gathered them because 4 years inside Damien Harlow's world had taught her that the only truly protected women were the ones who were never entirely unarmed. She was zipping the bag shut when she heard the elevator arrive. Chapter 2: The Confrontation. His footsteps came down the hallway without hurry. That was how Damien moved. Always controlled, always unhurried, as if the world arranged itself around his pace. Sophia. She didn't turn around. He appeared in the bedroom doorway. Still in his charcoal suit, dark-haired, jaw sharp with tension. His silver green eyes moved from her face to the bag on the bed to her face again. "What are you doing?" he asked. No alarm in his voice. He was already managing the situation. "Leaving." The word landed in the quiet room with a weight that surprised even her. "Leaving," he repeated, as if testing whether the word meant what it appeared to mean. "Yes. Because you misread a business dinner." Sophia finally turned to look at him. "She touched your face, Damien. And you sat there." Vivian Calloway's father controls 3 critical port networks along the Atlantic coast. That relationship has taken 14 months to rebuild after my father destroyed it. Last night was a working dinner. "She touched your face," Sophia said again, very quietly. He met her eyes. "I was mid-conversation." "You forgot how to flinch?" A muscle moved in his jaw. "Do not make this something it wasn't." "I am 7 months pregnant," Sophia said, and the steadiness in her own voice surprised her, because underneath it her hands were shaking. "I came to that restaurant because you asked me to. Because you said you wanted me there. And I found you sitting with another woman wearing the expression you used to save for me." "You are tired and you are reading into." "What was I reading into, Damien? Tell me specifically." The silence that followed answered everything. He crossed the room toward her. "We will have this conversation when you are not." "When I'm not what?" She stepped back. "When I'm calmer? More reasonable? More convenient? When you are not exhausted and upset." "I am not leaving because I am exhausted." Sophia picked up her bag. "I am leaving because I finally believe what I have been seeing for the past year." "Sophia." His voice dropped, losing its management tone. For a half-second, the man she had fallen in love with appeared behind the control. "Stop. Your mother arranged that dinner," she said. "Didn't she?" It was not a question. She watched something shift in his expression. A fractional tightening around his eyes. "She may have introduced the idea. Did she tell you I would be arriving at that hour?" Silence. "Did she tell Vivian Calloway to sit close to you? To touch you in exactly the way that would be most visible from the elevator entrance?" His jaw locked. "She set the whole scene," Sophia said softly. "And you let her?" "Because managing your mother's strategy was easier than talking to me about whatever has been dying between us for the last 12 months. That is not." "I'm not angry that you didn't love me enough," she said, and her voice finally cracked. "I'm devastated that you didn't respect me enough to be honest." She walked past him. At the door she stopped, one hand braced against the frame, but she didn't turn around. "If what we have is over, you should have told me. Being cruel by omission is still cruelty, Damien." "Sophia, please." But she was already in the hallway. Chapter 3: The Ultimatum. She went to her sister Maya's apartment on the north side. Damien did not appear in person for 4 days. What arrived instead? A daily delivery of white orchids that filled Maya's small kitchen until Maya started moving them into the hallway. Then a bracelet in a black velvet box with no note. Then a formal letter from his attorney, outlining a proposed financial arrangement that was breathtakingly generous and made Sophia feel like something that could be priced and purchased. She sent everything back. The orchids she kept, because Maya liked them. On the 6th day, Damien stood in the hallway outside Maya's door. Maya, who was 5'3" and entirely unafraid of anyone, looked him over and told him there was no reason for him to be welcome here. He accepted that without argument and left. 2 days later, Sophia agreed to meet Sophia Harlow for coffee. She didn't know why she agreed. Perhaps she simply wanted to hear the cruelty spoken plainly, without the softening layer that Damien always applied to his mother's decisions. Helena was already seated when Sophia arrived, a woman in her late 60s who wore power like a second skin, impeccable and cold. She ordered an Americano without looking at the menu. "I want to be efficient," Helena said pleasantly. You seem like a woman who appreciates efficiency. I appreciate honesty, Sophia replied. Then here it is. My son has responsibilities that extend far beyond a marriage that was never strategically sound to begin with. Helena turned her espresso cup in a small, precise circle. The Callaway alliance would stabilize our European connections for the next decade. Vivian is educated, well-connected, and from a family that understands how our world operates. You, my dear, are a woman my son became romantically infatuated with. That is not the same thing as a foundation. He married me. People make impulsive decisions when they are in their 30s and feeling sentimental. Helena smiled. It was a smile with no warmth behind it. The child you are carrying is a Harlow. That child will be raised properly and will want for nothing. What I am offering you is a quiet, dignified exit with enough financial security to rebuild your life comfortably. Sophia looked at the woman across from her. You arranged the dinner. Helena didn't flinch. I arranged an introduction. You told Vivian Callaway when I would arrive. You staged it. I created a moment of clarity, Helena said. You needed to see the shape of your situation. You were being willfully blind, and that was wasting everyone's time. You orchestrated my humiliation in front of a room full of strangers. I gave you an exit you could take gracefully, Helena corrected. I am still offering you that exit. Take the settlement. Have your baby. Build a small, lovely life somewhere. It is genuinely more than most women in your position are offered. Sophia stood. That child, she said, her voice entirely controlled, is my daughter. Not a Harlow asset. Not a bargaining chip in one of your negotiations. Mine. And I am leaving now, and you should understand that whatever I do next, you caused it. Helena's pleasant expression didn't flicker. You have no leverage, Sophia. You have no money of your own, no connections in this city that don't run through my family, and no. I have the truth, Sophia said. And I have been paying very close attention for 4 years. She walked out into the cold. That night, she wrote a letter. She kept it short, because she did not trust herself to write a long one without losing her composure entirely. Damien. I finally understand that the betrayal was never only about one evening in a restaurant. You built a life where your mother could position me like furniture, useful until she decided I wasn't. And you let it happen because keeping her managed was simpler than protecting me. I am not writing this to punish you. I am writing it because you deserve to know exactly why I'm gone. Our daughter will know her father when she is old enough and when I am certain that knowing him is safe for her. That is not a threat. It is the only promise I can honestly make right now. Do not send anyone after me. If there is anything left of what you used to feel for me, let it look like respect. Sophia. She laid the letter on the kitchen counter, waited under her wedding ring. Then, before the sun rose, she was gone. Chapter 4: The Safe Haven. Crescent Bay, Oregon looked like a place the rest of the world had simply forgotten to reclaim. Sophia arrived by train and then by a rental car. She drove herself for the first time in years, navigating narrow roads that curved along cliffs above a gray, churning Pacific. The town was small enough that strangers were noticed, but, she quickly understood, not necessarily unwelcome. Her attorney, one she had retained privately, paying from an account Damien didn't know existed, money she had saved in small amounts over 2 careful years, had arranged a rental cottage near the water. It was weathered and drafty, with a wood stove in the sitting room and a view of a rocky beach where seals sometimes rested in the afternoon. Sophia sat in the silence of her first evening there and cried for a long time. Then she made herself tea, propped her feet up, and began thinking about what came next. The quiet lasted less than a week. On the 7th morning, she woke feeling wrong in a way she couldn't immediately name, a heaviness, a persistent dizziness that didn't resolve when she sat up. She drove herself to the small medical clinic at the edge of town and sat in the waiting room until a doctor appeared. Dr. Claire Okafor was compact and direct, with reading glasses pushed up into natural hair and the kind of calm that comes from years of seeing exactly what needs to be seen. She took one look at Sophia's blood pressure reading and then looked at Sophia. "How long have you been traveling alone?" "About a week." "You're eating?" "Yes." Dr. Claire was quiet for a moment. "You paid in cash at the front desk. You gave a name I can't find connected to any insurance. And you keep looking at the parking lot through the window." She set the chart down. "I'm not here to ask questions that aren't my business. But I am going to tell you that you have elevated blood pressure and that you need rest, hydration, and significantly less stress, which I understand is an absurd thing to say to someone who is clearly managing a difficult situation." "I'm fine," Sophia said automatically. "You will be," Dr. Claire said, in a tone that was both corrective and kind. "But not by ignoring this. Come back Thursday. And if anything changes before then, you call the clinic directly. My personal extension is on the card." Crescent Bay, Sophia discovered, operated according to its own logic. People brought things. A neighbor appeared one afternoon with a jar of honey and a bag of oranges and the information that the hardware store would fix her wood stove at no charge because it was an old installation and therefore their responsibility. The woman who ran the bakery near the waterfront began setting aside a loaf of whole grain bread for her on Fridays without being asked. No one inquired where she had come from. A few people mentioned gently that they had seen harder winters and that the community had a habit of taking care of its own. For the first time in 4 years, Sophia slept without listening for sounds she shouldn't be hearing. Then her attorney called. "I need you to sit down," he said. Sophia sat. "I've been going through the documents you provided over the past several months. Among them, I found a reference to a private medical consultation from 6 years ago, connected to the death of Victor Harlow." He paused. "Damien's father was publicly recorded as having died from a cardiac event. But I traced a suppressed toxicology report. It was filed under a subsidiary name and buried inside a legal archive connected to a property dispute that was settled quietly. The report indicates concentrations of a cardiac medication in Victor Harlow's blood at levels that are not consistent with accidental overdose or natural failure. They are consistent with deliberate administration over time." Sophia felt the blood leave her face. "You're saying Helena?" "I'm saying the evidence suggests his death was not natural." The physician who certified the cause of death relocated to Portugal within 3 weeks of signing the certificate. His retirement was funded by a trust connected to a Harlow shell company. The wood stove ticked in the corner. Outside, rain had begun to move in off the water. "If we can authenticate this report and take it to federal investigators," her attorney continued carefully, "it would fundamentally change the picture. No family court judge would grant Helena Harlow custody consideration over your daughter with a federal murder investigation attached to her name." Sophia pressed her hand against her belly. Her daughter moved, a slow, rolling shift, as if she knew something important was happening above her. "Find everything that can be authenticated," Sophia said. "I will." "But Sophia, if we are going to open a federal case against Helena Harlow, we need someone with direct knowledge of the family's internal records. Someone whose testimony carries weight. You need Damien." Chapter 5, The Reckoning. She waited 3 days before she called him. She used a phone she had purchased in cash at a gas station 2 towns over. He answered before the second ring had completed. "Sophia." Her name came out of him like something he had been holding underwater. "I'm safe," she said. "I'm not telling you where." The breath he exhaled was not composed or controlled. It was the sound of someone who had been carrying a weight they hadn't admitted to carrying. "Okay. I called because my attorney found something. About your father." Silence. "There's a toxicology report. A buried one. The levels in his blood work at the time of death were not consistent with natural cardiac failure." And the doctor who signed off on his death certificate was paid a significant sum by a company your family controls, 3 weeks after your father died. The silence on the other end became something else entirely. Dimensionally different. You think she killed him, Damien said. His voice had gone to a place she had never heard it go before. Somewhere below cold. I think the evidence is pointing in a direction you need to look at. Send me everything your attorney has. If I do, Sophia said carefully, what happens next? I dismantle it, he said. All of it. Her. Whatever she built. Whatever she is. If she did this, he stopped. A long pause. She will not touch you. She will not touch our daughter. I don't care what it costs me. Damien. I need to know you are not going to protect her because she is your mother. She stopped being my mother, he said quietly, the day she set you up in that restaurant and stood back to watch what happened. Sophia closed her eyes. She sent the files the next morning. Within 60 hours, the Harlow organization began to collapse. The news alerts arrived in waves. Harlow matriarch named in federal murder investigation. FBI opens inquiry into Victor Harlow's death. Damien Harlow assisting authorities. Damien had not simply cooperated. He had initiated. He contacted federal investigators directly, before they came to him, and provided testimony, documentation, and access to records that had been sealed for years. He surrendered the infrastructure of his criminal empire piece by piece, accounts, operations, territories, alliances. In exchange for full immunity for himself and guaranteed legal protection for Sophia and their unborn child. He burned down what his family had built. He did it deliberately, and it was the most consequential choice he had ever made. Helena Harlow was arrested at her estate on a Tuesday morning. She accepted a plea agreement rather than risk trial. 12 years in federal custody and the permanent, legally binding relinquishment of any claim to Sophia's daughter. Chapter 6, The Birth. Winter deepened over Crescent Bay. The calls came every evening around 9 o'clock. Sophia usually answered. Damien asked about her health, about whether the wood stove was reliable, about what her doctor was saying. He never asked where she was. He never pushed. He talked about what he was doing to build something clean from what remained of his life, and he didn't make it sound heroic. He made it sound like work, because that was what it was. One evening he told her the full truth about Vivian Calloway. He had confronted her directly, after everything collapsed. She admitted that Helena had hired her for a specific purpose, had scripted the dinner, had instructed her precisely how to behave and when. Vivian had been paid to perform intimacy in a way that would be visible and unmistakable. Damien had not known. Sophia had not been entirely sure whether she believed this until she heard him say it plainly, without defensiveness, simply as a fact that he was ashamed to have missed. She believed him. She was not ready to tell him she believed him. On a February night with a storm pressing in off the Pacific, Sophia woke to a pain that arrived not gradually but completely, wrapping around her back and hips with a grip that left no room for pretending it was anything other than what it was. She called Dr. Claire first. Contractions. Maybe 6 minutes. I'm on my way to the hospital. You need to leave now. Sophia sat on the edge of the bed. Her hands were shaking and her heart was hammering, and she was entirely alone in a cottage on the Oregon coast in the middle of a storm. She called Damien. What's wrong? He heard something in her voice before she spoke. She's coming. The baby's coming now. Movement sounds immediately. Keys. A door. Where are you, Sophia? Tell me. She told him. I will be there. No qualifier. No estimated time. Just a statement delivered as fact. Labor moved faster than she had expected, and faster than Dr. Claire thought was ideal. The hospital was small and the storm was making everything harder. Sophia did not waste energy on composure. She held the railing and she breathed and she pushed when she was told to push, and she allowed herself to be exactly as frightened and in pain as she was, because she had run out of reasons to manage her own feelings for other people's comfort. Once more, Dr. Claire said. "You have this." Sophia pushed. Then a sound split the room that reorganized everything, a cry that was furious and alive and completely itself. The doctor placed a small, fierce creature on Sophia's chest. A daughter. Red-faced, dark-haired, already clearly opinionated about her arrival. "Hello," Sophia whispered. Tears were running into her hair. "I'm your mother. Your name is Lily." Lily seemed to find this information acceptable. She quieted. 3 hours later, knocking on the hospital room door. Hard, urgent knocking. A nurse went to check and then looked back at Sophia with a slightly uncertain expression. "There's a man in the hallway. He says." "Let him in," Sophia said. Damien Harlow looked like he had driven through a storm at speeds that should not be legal, which was accurate. His coat was soaked. His hair was disheveled. There was a cut on his hand that she would ask about later, probably from the car incident in the storm that he would eventually admit to. He stood in the doorway and looked at Sophia and at the small bundle she was holding. His face, which had spent 4 years being disciplined into composure, simply stopped working. "That's her? That's Lily." He crossed the room slowly. He sat on the edge of the bed as if he was not entirely sure he was allowed to, and he looked at his daughter with an expression that Sophia had no previous frame of reference for. "Can I?" She adjusted Lily carefully and passed her over. Damien held his daughter with the terrified precision of a man who understood that some things cannot be managed or strategized, only handled with complete and utter care. Lily's hand found his finger and closed around it. Damien made a sound that was not quite a word. His eyes filled. He didn't try to stop it. "She's so small," he said. "She's furious and perfect," Sophia said. "She has your chin. She has your timing. She showed up in a storm and immediately made everything complicated." He laughed, and it came out wet. "I'm sorry I wasn't here faster. I hit standing water on the highway and..." "You came," Sophia said simply. "That's what matters." He looked up at her. His eyes were raw with things that hadn't been said yet and would take a long time to say properly. "I will always come," he said. "For her. And for you, if you ever let me." Chapter 7: The New Foundation. For the first 4 months of Lily's life, Damien rented a room above a fishing outfitter's shop in Crescent Bay. He came to the cottage every morning and left in the evenings. He learned where the diapers were stored and how Lily preferred to be held during the 3 o'clock wakings, which was slightly upright and moving. He burned things on the stove. He fixed the back door latch without being asked. He sat on the floor of the sitting room with Lily on his chest while the wood stove clicked and the rain came in off the Pacific. He didn't ask for anything. He showed up and he was useful and he was present, and he was clearly working at something. At becoming a person he had not been raised to understand was possible. Spring came late to the Oregon coast. He started arriving earlier. He started staying longer. One afternoon when Lily was 5 months old, they walked the rocky beach together while Lily slept in a carrier against Sophia's chest. Damien walked beside her without touching her, hands in his coat pockets. "I've been talking to someone," he said. "A therapist." "I know that probably sounds..." "It sounds correct," Sophia said. He nodded. "She keeps asking me what I actually want. Not what the organization needs or what my family expects. What I want." He paused. "I want this. Specifically this. This town. This messy ordinary life. You. Lily." He glanced at her. "I am not telling you that to create pressure. I'm telling you because she says I need to practice saying true things directly instead of managing them sideways. That's very self-aware of you. It's very uncomfortable is what it is. Sophia smiled despite herself. I'm not ready to make decisions, she said. I know. I'm not going to be managed or moved sideways. I know that too, he said. You are the single most difficult person I have ever failed to manage in my entire life. It's one of the things I love most about you. She stopped walking. He stopped beside her. We go slowly, she said. I mean genuinely slowly. No large gestures, no timelines, no pressure. Whatever pace works for you. And you keep seeing the therapist. Already scheduled through July. She looked out at the gray ocean. Lily sighed in her sleep. Okay, Sophia said. One day at a time. He didn't reach for her hand or kiss her. He just nodded and they kept walking, close but not touching, along the edge of where the water met the shore. Lily turned 1 in February. Damien brought a small lopsided cake he had attempted himself and refused to be embarrassed about its appearance. Sophia said yes the following September, on the beach, with Lily standing in the sand between them investigating a piece of kelp with complete dedication. They married quietly the spring after that. Sophia wore a cream dress she had found in a shop in town. Damien wore a blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up, which was as close to casual as he was capable of achieving. Dr. Claire and Maya and a handful of people from Crescent Bay who had become, without anyone planning it, their community. They were all there. Lily wore a yellow dress and was deeply unbothered by the proceedings. Helena Harlow died in federal custody 4 years later. Damien received the notification by phone. He stood at the kitchen window for a long moment and then set the phone down. Are you all right? Sophia asked. I think so. He was quiet for a moment. I don't feel what I expected to feel. What did you expect? Something bigger. Grief or relief or anger. He looked at Lily, who was at the kitchen table drawing an elaborate picture of what she insisted was a sea dragon. Instead, I just feel like something finished. Something that was already over a long time ago. Sophia put her hand on his arm. She didn't get to have what you have. He looked at her. No. She really didn't. Lily grew up in Crescent Bay knowing the ocean and knowing her neighbors and knowing that her father picked her up from school every Tuesday and that her mother had once walked out of a very fancy restaurant and changed the entire direction of her own life and that this was the bravest thing a person could do. On Lily's 6th birthday, the cottage they had outgrown was replaced by a house with a big garden near the water, and the party overflowed into the yard, loud with children and neighbors and the kind of unremarkable happiness that is actually quite difficult to build and should never be taken lightly. Damien stood near the back fence watching Lily lead a parade of small children in a game whose rules she had apparently invented and was now loudly revising mid-play. Sophia stood beside him. I keep thinking about that elevator, she said. Which one? The one in Chicago. The night I left. She watched her daughter point imperiously at another child and renegotiate some fictional territorial boundary. I thought I was losing everything I had built. And I was, she said simply. I lost exactly what I thought I was losing. I just didn't understand yet that it needed to be lost. Damien was quiet for a moment. I was so afraid when you disappeared, he said. Not because I'd lost something I possessed. Because I looked up and realized I had let the most important person in my life become something I was managing instead of someone I was actually with. He shook his head slightly. My father died never having built anything real. My mother controlled everything and in the end had nothing. And I was well on my way to exactly the same place. Lily had redirected the parade and was now leading it back toward the cake table. Dad. She shouted across the garden, pointing without ceremony. The candles need to happen now. Damien straightened and called back, I'm coming, Lily, I'm being given orders. They are not suggestions. Lily replied, which was deeply her mother's daughter. Sophia laughed. Damien looked at her and she saw in his face what she had been watching develop slowly over years, the way something slow and difficult and genuinely chosen finally becomes permanent. The expression of a man who understood, all the way down, that this, the garden, the noise, the ordinary Tuesday disagreements and the imperfect cake and the daughter who issued non-negotiable edicts, was not a consolation for power. It was what power was actually for. And what happened when you finally learned to use it correctly. The end.
Thank you for listening to today's narrative. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button right now. It's the best way to help the channel grow. To never miss a release, subscribe to the Fiction feed and turn on notifications. See ya!